what's an interesting commentary on that is that living in the moment in that time period,
Yeah.
Boyz II Men was just out of the stratosphere. They were bigger than Jodeci.
Yeah.
Um, Mary J. Blige, she was doing her thing, but Toni Braxton was bigger
Yeah.
than
Yeah. Yeah.
Mary J. Blige.
On Break
But
My
we
Heart.
fast
Yeah.
forward 20 or 30 years later, and the Jodeci name, the Mary J. Blige's name has somewhat outlasted their counterparts, or their so-called rivals or whatever. And I won't say they're rivals, but and now people would think back and say, oh well, of course Mary J. Blige was bigger, but she wasn't. She didn't have the sales, she didn't have the hits. Jodeci, they had hits, but it wasn't Boys to Men level
Yeah.
hits.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, the commentary now. So I just think that was interesting. What are your thoughts on something like that? Why do you think that is?
Yeah. And I always thought about how when you have an album or you make music like Boys to Men and Tony Braxton did, that crossover to the more pop adult contemporary market. So you're talking about middle class, the middle class people who are both either white or black, who are saying, "Yep, this is something I can listen to. It's feel good. It's something, you're getting David Foster doing on Break My Heart for Tony Braxton. You're crossing into that Celine Dion market where you can go and do residency in Vegas, and you can shed out $200 a ticket to watch them perform. So that's where you're making the money, and that's where you want to be, because if you're writing and you're getting a royalty checks, that's where you want to be. I think what happened with both Boys to Men, who we're talking about mainly, and Tony Braxton, is that when they got to their third albums, they kind of went away from their formula. And I don't know if they felt like, oh, we're missing out our core fans who knew us on our first album. So they started to, evolution. Um, I have no idea why they went to meet Puffy to do 2 tracks on that album. I saw them perform live when I was living in Milwaukee, and they came and they were performing from the Evolution track, and they were trying to dance, and
Right.
I'm looking at them doing "I Can't Let You Go," and I'm thinking, and I'm watching, and they're trying to entertain us with dancing. I'm like, no, you're
Okay,
singers.
but well, why you can't believe why not? I mean, Diddy was or Puffy at the time was the biggest producer, and I think they weren't as happy with the second album. I feel like they felt the end result kind of put them in that adult contemporary old stuffy, which I can remember too because I was young and I kept thinking, yeah, the music is kind of getting kind of boring now. It's kind of slow, and for my like uncle or my my it didn't sound like it was for us anymore. It got too too mature sounding. So I think they did that as a way to. And I actually like the song "I Can't Let You Go." I think the dancing part just didn't work out. But the first single was the Jimmy Jam Terry Lewis produced Four Seasons of Loneliness, and that was a success. And
Yeah.
but let's talk about Evolution. I think Evolution was a great album. I think it was a really good album. I think that the problem is, I think those egos. It was several things. Like I think the label had issues because, of course, there were mergers going on.
Yeah.
Um, but we also, we can't forget that interview with Dallas Austin when he kind of discussed the egos behind the scenes. So I think some of those egos, um, you know, kind of affected the music and things of that nature. Um, and I think Babyface, as a result of some of the things that were probably, allegedly said, um, he wasn't giving his best. Like the song for Mama, that was okay.
But it was off his
That
Soul
was,
Food album, and that's one of my favorite
yeah,
Boyz Man. But it was off his Soul Food album, so it was almost
yeah.
like it was tagged onto that. Um,
Yeah, and the songs that he did do, I do like the song "A Girl in the Magazine." I love that song, um, and a couple of others. But I just don't feel like he gave his strongest songs to Boyz II Men. I think he held some of them back because I kept thinking the Drew Hill song "We're Not Making Love Anymore." that was to me, I would have loved for Boyz II Men to have recorded that. And then one song that Boyz II Men actually wrote, or Nate from Boyz II Men wrote for Uncle Sam, I Don't Ever Want to See You Again. I feel like they should have kept that for themselves. If they would, they needed those anthem,
Yeah,
strong
yeah. There was
ballad type records, and there
yeah,
was nothing like that on the album.
and Four Seasons of Loneliness was good, but it was too slow. It almost
Too
was,
slow.
yeah, it was just too slow to start off. Then it didn't really pick up. It didn't really pick
Yeah.
up, and it wasn't a powerful track. A good song, but it wasn't. Yeah, and Song for Mama was good, but it was very much associated with the Soul Food
Right.
album and the film. And so when I hear the track, I don't think Boyz II Men's Evolution. I'm thinking Soul Food album because it was in the
Right.
movie and so and the video. So unfortunately, they released it through the movie, but it affected the sales of the Evolution. And so I'm not privileged to understand anything about the background of the so-called ego stuff. I did hear that Dallas
Yeah.
Austin talk about issues around them, and how he just
And
said,
Candy.
oh, she
Candy from
also,
Escape too.
so she
But
mentioned that there
this
is,
is, yeah, she mentioned it too. But like I said, these are things that we, of course, these are people's statements. I'm trying to leave it out, but I just kind of think it is something that might help to understand why there was a few things going on that changed the dynamic of things. But like I said, I just don't feel like Babyface ultimately gave his best for that album because I felt like the songs were kind of mediocre. And coming off of I'll Make Love to You, End of the Road, Water Runs Dry, those are powerful songs, big
mm,
songs. And then the next album, you get a song for mom, a song for Mama, and
but that was
I
off
don't even
his,
remember the other song.
as we mentioned, it was off Boomerang. I'm sorry, off Soul
Right.
Food.
But now, if he
Things
would have gave
like,
them Last Night, just imagine if he gave As Yet's
yeah,
Last Night, that would have been a
yeah,
huge
yeah.
smash for Boyz II Men. If he would have gave them We're Not Making Love Anymore to
Oh,
from
he
Dream
wrote that.
Hill,
Oh, he
he
wrote
wrote
that.
that too. Yeah, that was on the Soul Food soundtrack. So there was some songs he gave away. Those would have been massive hits from Boyz II Men. But again, I think, and like I said, I don't know if you're privy to the interview of exactly what happened, but I think that there was some things allegedly said about from Boyz II Men that about getting the Babyface songs and that they could do their own. I mean, they already write, they already wrote hits for themselves. They don't need Babyface kind of thing. And so when they enlisted Babyface to come back, Babyface was kind of like, okay, well, contractually, I'm getting that paper, I'm getting that money, but I'm not going to give you my great songs. I'm going to give these to these other artists that are hungry and excited to work with me. I mean, I don't know. This is me. I'm just kind of like imagining. I don't know if this is actually wrong. So don't beat me up, guys. But this is what I suspect. I could be wrong, but I do think that. And even though they deny the statements of Dallas Austin and
Candy does.
Candy, they will admit that they did have a little bit of ego problem. They do
Oh,
admit that in one of their interviews. Not the same interview, but they will deny those allegations. But in another interview, they will kind of talk about how egos. I don't know if it was behind the music. Maybe you'll post one of those for Boyz II Men because I think in the behind the music special, I think then when they talk about the third album and everything, they start talking about egos.
okay,
But
okay.
anyway, but the album it goes on to sell like 3 million copies. It's respectable, but in industry terms, coming off of an album that sold what
25
yeah,
million.
that's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
flop.
It
And I
is.
tell people this all the time. If you sell 10 million copies on one album and your next album goes double platinum, that's kind of looked at as a flop, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. But then
So,
I think the other thing that I think, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the other thing that was happening at the same time was the money. Show me the money.
yeah,
They had a falling out with Michael Bivins, like, hey, you've taken all, where's all our money? We've sold 20 plus million, and we'll so they didn't. I think the the scales dropping off from their eyes, and they realized how they weren't getting that much money, so that happened, and I think they left Motown and they went straight to Universal, and
well,
and
I thought they left Bivens after the first album because I could have swore Motown bought them out from under because they were signed directly to Motown after the first album,
yeah,
if
so
I'm not
in the
mistaken.
first album they were with Biv 10. went to then, and Intro and others have said the same thing, where the labels will buy them out of their production deal and they'll go directly with them. But I think after the second album, they realized we still weren't making that much money.
That's true.
And I think they had a falling out with the label. And I think at the same time when the third album came out, Gerald Busby had left, Andre O'Rell comes in, so they moved to Universal, and I
That was
think
a part of it too.
yeah, and I just think, as you're right, you can't go from 25 million to 3 million, and as I said there, I think they didn't have those standout singles, and I just felt that I didn't feel the puffy tracks that they did. I just think it didn't fit what they were doing. And then they, and then after that, they go and do after. I'm just trying to go back into.
They do the album, Nate, Sean, Wanye,
Yeah,
and
you
Mike or
see,
something. I don't know what order
was
the
it,
names are in.
and that was
Mhm.
it. And one of the issues that they had with that is they're still
Under
it,
Universal.
they're still with
But
Universal, but then there's no Babyface, there's no L.A. Reid, there's no Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. They did a lot of the
and that
stuff
speaks
themselves.
volumes to the egos, because why would you not have the major producers that produce hits for you on that
Yeah,
album?
yeah,
Clearly there was a falling out. I don't say falling out, that's a bad word or term. I don't think that it was a falling out, but just like, again, the lackluster material that Babyface contributed. I don't want to say lackluster because they're great songs. They're just, or good songs, but they're just not great. Um, the
yeah,
powerful and power ballads that he usually gave them. After him kind of giving him the leftover songs that he gave them.
yeah. And
I don't know.
they wrote pretty much most of the album themselves. So you can
Hmm.
see what happens when they write it most themselves. And you know what happens when you write the albums most yourself? You go from 25 to 3 to gold, 500,000.
Yeah. I mean, to their credit, they did write their first album, and it was successful. And they did write on each album after that. It's just that
The
I think
amount
that
of stuff.
they were not making the money, and so they figured, look, we have to write our own music if we're going to make money, not realizing that you have Babyface and Jimmy Jam wrote those monster hits. So even if you do write your album, you do want to at least include some of their songs in the mix, you
Mm,
know.
yeah, I
But
mean, even and I think and then so then we had after that album, Michael leaves, and it's just the three of them.
well, they had another album on Arista, because when they moved over to Arista with L.A. Reid, and I cannot remember the album, but it was an okay album. It was pretty good,
Oh, Full
but
Circle,
it's
yeah,
yeah,
Full
Full
Circle.
Circle is pretty much forgotten by most, but it was okay album, pretty good. Babyface did return, and he gave him another leftover studio scrap song. What was that song called? Show Me the Color of Love or something like that.
Okay,
I don't know. It was just
Color of
crazy.
Love, yeah, yeah.
Something that was not going to be a hit. And then of course
Okay,
Arista
even
thinking, let
Jimmy
me
and
put that
Terry
out.
came on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did they put out a bad single? They shouldn't have put that song out. That was the to me the most boring song on the whole album. But again, like I said, it's not
and
even necessary
it
to talk
went
about the
gold. It
album.
went gold again, and I think one of the things you do get is when you're that big of an artist and you're just going gold. Um,
Yeah.
you
Because they're
know,
spending so much money on you.
yeah, and so then they do the that's when then Michael leaves and
Yeah.
they went for 3, and I think after they turned to 3, I mean, of course, by that time the industry is changing quite a bit. Um,
Right.
yeah, when they're 3, it just, I mean,
Because even
even
going
though,
back to the third album, music was changing, if you recall, because there were new younger groups coming out at the time of Evolution. You had 112, you had Jagged Edge,
yeah, Drew Hill, yeah,
and
they were very, and they were more merging hip hop and R&B, and it
mm,
felt real, it felt consistent, and actually because hip hop was becoming the new pop,
right.
they could cross over with those ballads, and they could bring a Nelly or Ludacris on a track, and it will still fit. I think Boyz II
Right.
Men were caught in that dilemma of, okay, the year of the boy bands. So even the whole NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Britney, they've stopped selling 20 million per album, and then but our R&B roots, we've sort of fallen away from that. So we don't really have the relationship with the R&B stations as we once did. So where are we now? We're
Right.
caught up in the loop, and
Well, we also can't forget that Boys to Men were so Backstreet Boys could become, and so NSYNC. And so they took that formula of the power ballads and the sweet love songs, and they ran with it. So they already had their version. The
yes,
crossover audience had their versions. The
yeah,
shinier,
and I
cutesy,
think you're right. So because
family friendly versions.
it's
Yeah.
just like when New Edition came out, and then they brought out New Kids in the Block, and
New Kids on the
they
Block.
made the money.
Right.
They were doing
Right.
the same thing, and they took all the money. And I think when Boyz II Men, yeah, because around that time when the third album or fourth album were coming out, so you did have the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and so they had
Mm.
they had the better palette ballads,
Yeah.
what was that Backstreet Boys track? I can't remember it now. It's one of
Well, it can be better if you can't
no,
remember it. But,
no, no,
I'm
no.
never just saying because Babyface, we all
Tell me
remember
why
slow.
ain't nothing but a party. Tell me why I'm never gonna hit. You have not heard that one?
When you go
I
on a
hit
date with your wife or
it.
girlfriend or whatever, do you play that song or do you play on
Good.
BT or I'll Make Love
The
to You? I mean, I'm just saying.
No, even Bye Bye Love, we didn't sync. So yeah,
Yeah,
they had
they had
Christmas.
didn't they have a power ballad? I can't remember.
Who's that?
I can't lie. I did like Backstreet Boys. I thought that I liked their music. I liked their songs. So I can't even
Yeah,
front. I did
that's
like
what
Show Me Them. Who was the song that Full Force wrote? I can't remember.
yeah,
I'll never break. Did they make that? I'll never break your heart. I don't know if they made that one, but anyway.
yeah. But then
But
okay,
Mike left and the dynamic changed. I mean, it was only three. You didn't have that
yeah.
bass. You didn't have that bass note under there on the songs. Um, and then the guys did. I think they put out an album called Throwback. I can't remember what the album they did put
They
out.
did a Motown sort of collabo of
Yeah,
the
that was a
rim.
bad move.
Yeah, and because then they've already pretty much given up. They've said, yeah, we're not forget it. We're just gonna do stuff like that. And
Yeah, when you start doing like Christmas albums or cover albums or live albums or greatest
no,
hits albums,
okay,
it's
their
kind of like
Christmas
over,
album
right?
was pretty good,
Well,
but it came out
and
just when it came out
right,
after two, so it wasn't. They were still big, and they had the track with
right,
Let It
right,
Snow
right.
with Boyz II Men. So there was what you're talking about is the
In this
throwback album.
case, yeah, it would worked, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying it in general because
in
most
general.
people, when like Faith and it's a lot of different people when they start doing a Christmas album, it's kind of like or SWV, they're on the way. Like
Oh
SWV
yeah,
put out a Christmas album right before they both broke up. But
Destiny Child did it. Yeah, I think
yeah,
when you're doing it, when maybe your second album, and you're still very hot, and you do
yeah.
it, we can excuse it, but
B2K, they put one out, they broke up. So I don't know if there's a curse with the Christmas album, but Boyz II Men put out a classic Christmas album, so it worked for them. But when they did that covers album, I just thought it was too early.
yeah,
And
it's a mitten
yeah,
defeat to me.
when Mike left, it just wasn't the same, unfortunately.
Yeah,
And fans really, I don't think they ever got over that. I do think I do believe there is a chance and there was a chance for Boys to Men to make a successful comeback. And I don't know if that window's closed yet, but I just do believe there was a period of time where they could have made a successful comeback. But like I said, without Mike, I don't see that happens. And Mike is a key ingredient to that group. So visually, I mean, he added something to the group.
yeah,
He was not many of the groups in the '90s had a bass singer, so that was already something, an element from traditional groups from the '60s and '70s. They
hmm
had bass singers and the tenor and all of that stuff like that. So without that element, they were just another group. Even though Wanye, as great as a vocalist he is, um, it's not enough to keep the interest of the audience. And like I said, you had younger versions out there, like the Drew Hills and the 112s and they're out there
Jagged
dancing and
Edge,
moving
yeah.
and entertaining, and they
Mm,
have the hip hop. They have the hip hop audience as well.
yeah.
So the only way to go for Boyz II Men was either back to their roots of R&B or go more further into the pop stratosphere and lose their core audience completely. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
But
you,
they were great, and I really appreciate what they, what they brought to the game. I think that over time their influence has kind of been diminished or overlooked a little bit, but I
mm,
think they were just as influential as Jodeci. I think that it's just that Jodeci has the hood.
yeah.
They have the hoods, but Boyz II Men were very influential. When you look at groups like 112 will tell you, Drew Hill will tell you, even Woody, because I know Woody was talking about how he was. I think he said he was a Jodeci fan, and
Cisco was a Boys to
Cisco was
Men.
a Boyz II Men fan, which a lot of
Yeah.
people would think the other way around, even though
Yeah.
people say that Cisco sounds like KC. So, I mean, but it's a lot of people that were influenced by Boyz II Men. Next, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, even though they're a trio, I think they were influenced too. So,
Mm,
it's a lot of people that it's just that harmony element. Four
yeah.
guys coming together and harmonizing. I don't think that people think of Jodeci like that as
No.
a harmonizing group. So,
No, no. As I said, we have Casey, the power ballad, with JoJo softening it down, and then they've got the harmonies that are orchestrated in production. Which seem to flow and stuff. Thanks for watching the show today.
and before we go, remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button.
Yeah, but also remember to hit the notification button so you can be notified when we have a future show.
That too.
All
All
right.
right. See you
Thanks,
next time.
guys.